Imagine standing on solid ground 1 minute and then tumbling down into a deep hole the next. This sudden and unpredictable natural disaster is called a sinkhole. Today we're going to learn about what causes sinkholes. Throughout this PowerPoint, you will learn more about the causes, the effects, some of the warning signs, and basically learn what is a sinkhole and how it affects our world. So first, we're going to talk about what is a sinkhole. A sinkhole is defined as circular holes in the land surface that form when underground caverns collapse. So basically when the ground is not really durable anymore and becomes too soft due to the erosion and the water, the ground can then suddenly form a collapse into a sinkhole. So here I list some characteristics of sinkholes. First off, they are circular, they are wide. Usually they are funnel shaped and have water at the bottom of them because the groundwater that is underground can then cause a pool to sit in the bottom of a sinkhole, kind of just like a pool. Also, they happen very suddenly and are very unpredictable. We will see throughout the rest of this PowerPoint some of the warning signs and ways to prevent them, but it's very hard as they are just a naturally occurring natural disaster. And lastly, they differ in size and can continue to expand over time. We will see later on some pictures and diagrams of some big sinkholes and some smaller ones that are just sporadic, because these can happen anywhere and are very, as I said, unpredictable of the size they will be, the shape, and the effects they can have on life. Next, we have types of sinkholes. There are three main types of sinkholes that we will look at today. All are very similar, but have differences based on their names. So first we have solution sinkholes, which are common in areas with a thin cover of soil to the surface, exposing the bedrock below to continuous erosion by water. As the bedrock erodes, particles collect in the spaces it leaves. Over time, a small depression forms. This hole is shaped like a bowl and is very large. So that is a solution sinkhole, as the surface and the soil, the way it is affected by the erosion, essentially cause the ground to collapse. Next, we have a cover collapse sinkhole, which occurs when the bedrock is covered by a deep layer of soil and earth. So once eroded, the cracks form in rocky areas around it. The erosion forms weak points and makes a sudden collapse. This then creates a very large sinkhole. So obviously, these two sinkholes are very similar as they both occur due to erosion and are large in size. Lastly, we are going to look at a cover subsidence sinkhole. This type of hole is formed over time. So basically, this type of sinkhole, it wouldn't just happen because the soil got bad in one night. It would happen throughout years and years of erosion and water absorption and the things happening underground to the limestone and the bedrock and all the minerals under there that would cause the ground to not be so strong anymore. So this sinkhole is pretty much defined as with having the bedrock is covered by soil materials which are not well knitted together. So it's essentially like a puzzle piece. If it is not fitting perfectly together, it'll break. So this ground and the things underground are not fitting perfectly together and knitted for it to really stay strong. And the soils mixed with the clay or sand often face occurrence in the hole. So once the bedrock erodes, the clay or sand in the ground start pre-mating through the cracks and settles into the spaces left behind. This essentially creates a cavity on the surface of the land, then causing the hole to sink and collapse. So these are our three types of sinkholes that we will look at some examples later on of the way these kinds of sinkholes can affect life and the way they look. So now that we know what a sinkhole is and some of the types of sinkholes, let's think about where do they occur? So first, sinkholes occur on types of land surfaces that overtop water and soluble rock. These occur in an environment known as karst topography. Now, karst topography is defined as a type of terrain formed by the dissolution of soluble carbonate rocks, such as limestones and dolomite or evaporite rocks. And these evaporite rocks are gypsum and halite. So these types of minerals and rocks underground, when damages are caused to them, they essentially is where a sinkhole will occur, and that is in this type of karst topography. Next we have the causes. So we're going to look at two types of sinkholes. These are natural sinkholes and human-made sinkholes. So first we're going to look at some of the causes of natural sinkholes, which are very hard to predict and very hard to prevent. So Natural sinkholes occur due to erosion and underground water. The ground is made of dirt, rocks, and minerals, and then when this ground becomes flooded with water, erosion then occurs. The structure grows weak, and the ground essentially collapses into an open hole. That's why they are circular shaped, because it is a hole. And these holes sink and form over a period of time. So basically, as you can see, the natural sinkholes, because they're just made of things from the ground and natural things outside, there's not much you can do to prevent them or stop them from happening. But now we have human-made sinkholes. Now, these sinkholes occur from human causes. First and foremost, they occur from things such as man-made labor due to construction, mining, and drilling. So from the construction, mining, and drilling, broken water or drain pipes can occur, and the water leakage can then cause softening to the soil and the rock and really affect the ground underneath. Also, another thing, believe it or not, that can cause a sinkhole from us is heavy traffic. You wouldn't really think that all this traffic can cause a sinkhole, and it might not be the main reason for the sinkhole, but some of the natural causes of a sinkhole can then be triggered and really cause the sinkhole due to heavy traffic, because the heavy weight on soft soil causes the ground to collapse. So therefore, if we know some of the things happening from natural sinkholes, things like heavy traffic or even buildings and all this other stuff that we make in the earth to change it can then cause a sinkhole. And now we have the effects. So the effects of sinkholes affect the environment and the land. So first, they change the topography of the area and divert streams of underground water. They cause damage to human life and property, which I think is one of the most damaging because aside from death would be the worst cause from a sinkhole. But causes to our property, our houses, our cars can really cost us a lot of money out of our pocket in the long run. Because if your house is damaged from the sinkhole, which occurs many times, there's nothing you can really do about it because it is a natural disaster. It's almost as bad as a tornado hitting your house, so the damages can be very extreme. Also, as I said before, they cause miles of damage to the land, and they are dangerous to the foundations of buildings. Now, my last bullet and my last point on this slide about the effects, I think is one of the most crucial and important to our lives, as sinkholes create toxic chemicals that come up from the ground and cause pollution to the groundwater. And groundwater, as we learned, is the most potable water we have, and is also it's hard to access that water. So if a sinkhole causes that water to get polluted and then harmful for us to intake and consume, then this then affects us and the world around us. So groundwater is very essential and important for us, so a sinkhole can then affect that. And now that we know the causes and the effects, let's look at some of the warning signs. So we're not too scared of sinkholes anymore. We can really learn how to prevent them and look out for them. So here I have a list of warning signs that start from round circular depressions in the earth, cracks in roads or pavements, a sudden drop of well water levels, sudden drainage of a pond, foundations that slant, dips, depressions, or slopes that appear in the yard, discolored or contaminated well water, and cracks in interior walls, and lastly, trees or fence posts that tilt or fall. Now, these are all examples of things we could observe just from walking outside. Though we wouldn't necessarily think that a sinkhole could occur from them, there's a good chance it could. Therefore, by knowing these warning signs, it might not help us to prevent the ground from collapsing because the damage is already done. But it can help us to evacuate and save ourselves and some of our property and our personal items if possible. So as I said earlier, it's not easy to detect a sinkhole, but knowing the warning signs can help to be more cautious and to help people evacuate before getting stuck in this natural disaster. And also, the human-made sinkholes that I talked about earlier can be prevented by maintaining your underground plumbing systems, because if these systems are not kept up to date, or they are damaged or broken and there's water leakage, all of our plumbing systems come from underground, and if the underground isn't stable, how can we live on top of it? Now here I just have a list of some of the places they most likely occur. Now they occur in these places because the soil there is more susceptible to sinkholes, and after reviewing the list of these, you will see that the water in these places really affects the ground, and there's more water and more wetlands there, which essentially makes sense of why these are places that these sinkholes will mostly occur. So we have Texas, Alabama, Missouri, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Florida is one of the primary places where sinkholes occur. And that very much makes sense to me because of all the water there, the way the soil is. In all these places, soil is different from how it is in New Jersey. So these are places where you would most likely see sinkholes. Now we have some real life examples I want to go over because these sinkholes have happened plenty of times in the past. So first we have Holbrook Basin of Arizona. So this occurred due to the uplift of the Colorado Plateau that affected the underground flow of water. This caused a 100-meter collapse in the ground that formed. These sinkholes were in the Sinks and the Dry Lake Valley, and in these places the lakes were then drained and caused the ground to erode and then form a sinkhole. So these acts happened in multiple years: 1963, 1979, 1984, and 1995. So the presence of more than 500 karst features in the Holbrook Basin evoked practical concerns. And essentially it affected the people, the transportation, the development, the foundations, and really the human habitation of life there. A bit more recent case that happened in 2017 that we will look at is in Florida. So a sinkhole swallowed 2 homes there. It was one of the largest sinkholes in the Pasco County. The hole was 225 feet in diameter and 50 feet deep. And this hole expanded over time. So on our next slide, these are the pictures of the 2 examples I just talked about. Here we have the one in the Florida sinkhole of 2017. As you can see, it doesn't really look big from the view of the picture they show, but this is a very wide sinkhole that covered 2 houses and all the way from a good amount of feet from across the street. And it's hard to tell, but this sinkhole is very deep. And if you look at the middle, there is obviously a lot of damage and debris that were caused due to the sinkhole. So therefore, these houses are going to have, and these homeowners are going to have a really tough time figuring out what to do from this natural disaster. Here we have the phenomenon that is the Holbrook Basin sinkhole, which looks in this area like a snake and has some other small divots around it. And lastly, I just have a few more pictures of sinkholes that we can look at. First, we have ones that, as I explained earlier, there's some smaller ones that are sporadic throughout the ground. They're pretty deep, but they are not as big. It looks like they're pretty much over a golf course. Below that, I have a sinkhole that is much deeper and caused much more damage from a house that's pretty much almost falling over into it. Now, though it might be stuck here, if this sinkhole expands and this house gets weaker, it will all go into the sinkhole, and that can also affect the value of what's underground. Here we have a bit of a larger sinkhole that is filling up with water, as the water can drain into this and then affect more of the underground. And here we have a deep sinkhole that looks like it broke through concrete. Now, most of us view concrete as one of the most strong and durable things out there, but due to what's happening underground, that concrete can become very, very weak and then soft and all of a sudden collapse out of nowhere. Here's a little diagram. It's not very important, but if you look closely at it, you will see that it's just pretty much a diagram of here's the house and the underground plumbing system. We have the limestone and the clay in the soil here, and then the aquifer. Now it shows that how your plumbing system connects to the water in the underground. And if a sinkhole occurs, it will then affect all of this water. And that's very dangerous to us. So now, I hope throughout this PowerPoint you were able to learn more about what a sinkhole is, how they occur, where they occur, maybe some of the causes and effects, and especially the warning signs. Because though they are very unpredictable, we do need to know how to prevent them and possibly get away from them as soon as possible. So I hope you learned a lot from my PowerPoint. Thank you.